Hi, you're listening to Collectively Speaking by the Birthday Collective, a bottom-up initiative to develop ideas about Singapore's future. Welcome to this space, where Birthday Book alumni have conversations about the things that matter to them, to us, and to Singapore. We hope that you will be a part of the many conversations we will have, or perhaps to even start your own. And now, onward with the episode.
Hi there, everyone. A really warm welcome to all of you to this edition of Collectively Speaking, a version of both a podcast and a video that the Birthday Collective does, drawing on the collection of different writers that we've had in our different books over the years. Today, we've got a really special topic that we wanted to explore, and this is the topic of facilitation. Many of you will have heard that word in use either in meetings at work or sometimes in community groups that you're in, when a facilitator gets invited to help you run the meeting or the gathering that you've got. But it's a complex word, right? It means many different things to different people. And today, what I've done is I've collected my 5 most favorite facilitators, right? People who've been involved in different aspects of the work, to see if they can help us shed some light on what exactly it means, as well as how we can use this in both our daily lives as individuals, as organizations, and even possibly as a country. And they're all going to share with us different thoughts on various aspects of what facilitation means. To start us off, I'm going to ask them to each introduce themselves, but also to then tell us a bit about what facilitation means to them, and to maybe define it for someone who's never heard of it. So to give us a layperson's definition of what exactly facilitation is about. And we're going to start with Sheila Pakir, who's here on my right. Sheila, please.
Thanks, Aaron. And hello, everybody. Just like to say, we thought we were coming for an audio-only podcast. This video element is very surprising, so forgive the awkwardness. We had not mentally prepared ourselves. But yes, thank you so much, Aaron. I'm really happy to be here with so many amazing facilitators, many of whom have been personal role models for me in this work. So feeling very honored to get to start. So what does facilitation mean to me? To me, it really just comes down to creating an environment where people feel safe and comfortable. Because once people feel safe and comfortable, they'll be able to talk to each other. And that's really the whole idea behind facilitation. Getting people to a place where they can talk to each other in a true, non-superficial, kind of going deep a little sort of manner. And the only way people can do that is if they feel safe and comfortable. So to me, that's the key thing that facilitation does. Okay,
so it's about comfort. I mean, the technical term facilitation means to make easy, right? So I suppose the making easy here refers to giving people the comfort in order to be part of a group discussion. That's great. Let's hear from Louis now. What does it mean to you and how would you define it?
Hi everybody, my name is Louis. So for myself, I like to describe myself as a curious person. And for facilitation, so it's all about asking questions, asking the right questions to get a group of people to find their answers. So that's what facilitation means to me.
That's true. Louis, you run something called More Than Just, right? Which is an online community that brings people together to have conversations around difficult topics. And I have noticed that the way in which they phrase their questions is something they spend a lot of time thinking about. Let's hear from Prakash now. Prakash Nair.
Hi everybody. My name is Prakash. So just adding on to what Louis said about asking the right question, right? For me, it's about listening. But if you listen attentively, you know what is the right question to ask. And listening is more than just listening with your ears, right? It's more than just the words that are being shared by the participants. It's their feeling behind it, the intention behind it, the emotion behind it. And that's the role of the facilitator is to find the meaning behind what is the words that are being shared. And for that to happen, I think it's all about listening.
Okay, so we've heard about comfort, we've heard about questions, we've heard about listening for the deep meaning and not just the superficial meaning. Dawn, tell us a little bit about what facilitation is for you and how would you define it?
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. Well, when I think about facilitation, one of the first phrases that comes to mind is one that comes out of the mouths of facilitators very often, which is holding space. So facilitators hold and shape space. And when I think about space, there's a few different kinds of space, right? One is the physical space, obviously, that's the most obvious thing, how the chairs are laid out, how the room feels. But there's also the time element of space. How are you going to use this time in a purposeful, meaningful way? And then the third element links to what Sheila was talking about, the safety piece, which is the psychosocial space, right? Who's in the room? Do I trust them? Can I reveal more of myself? Do I feel safe enough to do so? So those are the three immediate sort of spaces that come to mind when I think about facilitating.
I love that. So 3 levels of space that we have to work with. Doug, what would you respond to this question with?
Thanks, Aaron. Well, thanks for letting me go last because I get to summarize, say yes, what they all said. But actually, in my mind, I think facilitation would be a few different levels. So every conversation we have, if there's facilitation involved, the conversation is richer and people feel more life. There's a life-giving force to a conversation because of the listening, the questions, the space. Anyone can facilitate a meeting they're at when they ask those questions and listen to what's happening in the room. And I guess at the higher level, some of us are asked to design and facilitate processes to help groups get to a certain space. So I would say it's a little bit of all of that.
Thanks so much, folks. I think, you've covered so many different ideas there, right? Around process, around asking questions, around deep listening, around holding space. The thing I'm interested in is how do these ideas get concretized in actual facilitation work? And I was wondering if each of you could tell us a story about how you got involved in facilitation work and how these different ideas actually got demonstrated and exemplified. Let's go in reverse order this time. So maybe, Doug, you can start us off.
Okay, this is a tough question. I think for many years I was doing facilitation, even though I didn't know the term at all or what the skills were about, because I was helping to run IT projects. I was doing a lot of work in the community. And then I got into this work, organization development, facilitation. And that's when I learned different techniques. Like, well, the funniest one is when somebody in a group asks a question, you say, "Oh, fabulous question. Who else? Who has an answer for that?" You can only use that once, right? But it's helpful. So learning all the skills and the techniques in design, I was started facilitating all across the U.S. and around the world, and I was just blown away by the power of these skills that we just talked about, and how it allowed groups to have conversations that they really wanted to have but didn't have permission, didn't know how to do it. And they could create really extraordinary outcomes by having those conversations, both in the West, where people tended to be maybe a bit too argumentative, and then in East Asia, particularly, where people are a bit quiet. It seemed to work in many different contexts.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah. Okay, let's see what ideas Dawn has to add to this.
Yeah, so my first exposure to facilitation, again, like Doug, I didn't actually know the word. I didn't know what that was about. I was a young civil servant, and I was asked to work on a corporate vision and mission piece. And instinctively, I knew it couldn't just be done in my office and writing a paper, but I didn't know how to go about it. So I approached some people who were wiser than me, and some of them introduced me to this whole body of work called the Learning Organization. Peter Sengi's work was very instrumental in shaping the field of facilitation. And that really just opened my eyes to what it means to engage a group of people in co-creating this vision and mission themselves. So that's where this idea of holding space comes in. So what's my role in doing this vision mission is not to write the thing itself, but to shape a space where people can come in and be part of the process of designing this vision.
That's great. So we have 2 accidental facilitators so far, right? One in the IT space, one in the civil service. Prakash, what's your facilitator origin story?
Yeah, so make that 3.
Okay.
Right. So clearly we didn't go past F in the dictionary, so we didn't know what facilitator. But really, so I started as a teacher. So I've been a teacher for I was teaching for many years. And one of the things that I realized, the students that I was teaching, they were either not motivated or they were very motivated. So it was either one of the two. I taught the 2 extremes. And for the students who were motivated, my role was therefore different from the students who were not. And I realized that the more I came across as a teacher who knew everything, and the more more distant they became. So I thought, okay, what's the best way to go about doing that? And I thought, okay, let them. I just asked the right question to trigger something, and then and then let them go. And so coming back to what Doug was saying earlier about the definition of facilitation, I think that's it, right? It's about asking, being the person that generates things. It doesn't have to be in a formal setting. So I was an informal facilitator and I realized I was an informal facilitator even in my family, for example. I'm the peacemaker in the house and, get conversations, whereas people were shouting at 2 different levels. So I realized that I had that I don't know. It's not a skill that is particularly helpful because I'm often the brunt of stuff at home. But actually, so that's how it became accidental. So that's really that. And then fortunately, when I joined the army as an NS man, right? So I was an NS man and got downgraded. So I ended up becoming a facilitator, officially being appointed a facilitator under using Peter Senge's learning organization things. And that's when I realized things like, mission, vision, values is not about the commander writing it down. And in the army, it became so important because of a hierarchical structure that we need somebody external to say, okay, let's hear from the CSM, let's hear from the guy who's on the ground, right? And as well as the commander. So everybody has an equal voice. And then I think that was the genesis of it.
Right. So we're hearing about facilitation being used in IT organizations, in the civil service, in the army, in families, in schools. Louis, where has your experience been?
If I have to really go really, really back, it was when I was a kid. I realized I just keep asking a lot of questions.
Right.
Trying to find out why people say certain things.
It hasn't changed, but sorry.
Yeah.
So it's a born facilitator.
Yeah. Not quite accidental in this case.
But in a more formal setting, I guess it was when I was also in the service, when I thought I was attending a meeting. So I got in there and then people start to lay post-its around it. So that was my first interaction with post-its. And at the point of time, I just thought that, it was just a nice stationery paper. I just write on it and paste it on a wall, sure, whatever. But it was only later on when I got guidance and coaching. And then I realized that it's actually a very powerful tool for us to really pause, to reflect, to get different types of people to think about it first and writing it down. And then for you to also instruct who gets to speak next. So that was when then I get to learn more about what the facilitation means.
So it's not just about the abstract stuff, right? The physical space, the use of things like post-its and markers versus pens and paper actually changes the dynamic of a meeting, or the space, as Dawn said earlier. Okay. Sheila, what about your story?
Oh, it is tough to go last, Doug, isn't it?
You'll all have a chance to go last, don't worry.
So very much like Dawn, my first experience with facilitation was as a young civil servant. And I think one of my first facilitation assignments was with a group of very senior civil servants on a rainy Saturday morning in a far-flung corner of Singapore. It was a retreat. They were there and they were being forced to discuss stuff that they didn't want to discuss. Nobody really wanted to be in the room. And I think there was a high level of kind of cynicism as to the process as well. So it was a little intimidating, to say the least. And I think that's where the answer to my first question comes from, like that idea of making people feel safe and comfortable in a room. I realized that even if there are very senior people in a room, and as a junior person, you assume that a senior person walks into a room and feels comfortable. That's not always the case, especially when you're surrounded by fellow senior people, some of whom you may not like, some of whom you may not trust very much, or you might not have much of a working relationship with. So I realized that my role as the junior person in the room with nothing to lose was to just try to make everyone feel comfortable, sometimes by being a bit of a bumbling fool at the front of the room, because that put people at ease and made people laugh. And then it also helped me realize the power of things like flip charts, right? Because I'm terrified of all these senior people. And so I occupy myself with dutifully writing down what they say on this flip chart and trying to organize it into something that sounds coherent.
Which also helps them to feel listened to, right?
Exactly.
If you write the stuff down.
And that's when I realized the power of it, because they started out the conversation kind of snippy and snappy and a little bit dismissive of, why am I here? I'm really busy. I've got other things to do. And when you start writing down what they're saying, it definitely changed the energy in the room. They felt seen, they felt heard, which again are things that you just believe that a senior person will automatically feel, right? Because they're so senior. But people want to be seen and heard no matter who they are. And so that was my fundamental introduction to facilitation. No matter who the person is, no matter where they come from, no matter how comfortable you think they should feel when they walk into a room, there's some work to be done to make them feel that way. And once you do, then you get a good conversation out of it.